Well, we
Yeah.
can start screen sharing. I just want to, mention that since some days ago, Hans and I worked on a performance problem, and Hans made so it's much faster actually to start up new echo spaces in turnkey from a week ago. They come up instead of taking actually if you have a big model, it could take up to a couple of seconds for it to instantiate it on a not so fast web server, and that was at least cut in 1/5 or 1/6. So
Yeah, so
makes quite a big difference.
there was some obvious mistakes that became apparent as soon as um, we started to look at it, because I have always assumed that it should be very fast to create a new echo space once the first one is created, because as the first one is created, the type system is expanded and everything is done. But then the type system is static, so doing new instances should go very fast. But in this case, when we run with the model from not the pre-compiled model, but we pour it in runtime, we made some mistakes that made it recreate stuff, and that was expensive and not performant. So, and that's good.
Wasn't that noticeable even if you have a fast computer?
Hmm.
But if the model was big with a lot of stuff and kind of sluggish Azure web app, it became noticeable. It's always like that, I feel. When you look for something and then it's like, but how come we have never noticed this before? It's been wrong for years. There is something that all of a sudden shines a light on.
Yeah. So there was a couple of things that I think I should mention that are new and worth discussing. And something that happens to me quite frequently is that I'm thrown in or switching between models, and even if you were familiar with a certain model at one point, time has passed and you might not be any longer, or you get insecure. Can you trust your memory, or how do I find my way about? And of course, we have these overviews, pictures to help you to navigate a model to find where you want to be. And of course, all the diagrams can choose what to show, and you can remove stuff from view, and then you can trick yourself into forgetting that other stuff exists. But then you always have the auto diagrams that shows everything, so that's good. But once you are at something, you might have another class in mind that you're not quite sure how they relate. They probably relate somehow, but not necessarily exactly how. So we added this sort of finder function up here so if I'm on a class here called order response, I can just that's set to order response, and I can just click this one. So you're on order response, where you want to go to. So given the complete model, maybe I want to go to outgoing notification. Is there any relation taking me from order response to outgoing notification? And then instead of you doing this yourself, the computer does it really fast, loops through everything, 1 hop, 2 hop, 3 hops, up to, I think it's quite deep. So what we do here is say that the first step you're gonna take in order to get to this one, outgoing notification, would be to Svea order, the association is called, and then we have this parenthesis here where we say that the cardinality for that one is 1, and then the next hop is Svea shop key, and the cardinality for that one is also 1, and that goes to users, and that's a multi-link, and from there you go to outgoing messages from me, and then you are on outgoing messages. So, but that might not be what I want, but I get all the possible ways taking me there, and that really can help me to find the details, to jog my memory that this is probably the way I want to go. If I find one of these ways, I can just choose it, and then that one is pasted in here. Now it's a little small screen, so it's crowded, but yeah. And you can grab it from here by copying it and using it in your view models or where you need it. So I think that's quite good. Little helper thing to help you remember how to get from one place to another easily. And this is of course available in design time, but if you have, like we do quite often, use the debugger form in runtime, it could be appropriate to have access to this kind of function even from within the OCL editor. So it's available there as well. If I were to go to sort of, just gonna take an expression here, anyone, and if I'm at self and I can right click and say to expression builder and where you want to go. Well, I'm from order response, maybe I want to go to a print job. Is there any ways to go from order response to print job? Well, this one, it goes to order, customer order row, print jobs. And this is also a good example on what this thing does, because what we aim to do with this function is to remove the need to look any further. So within this parenthesis we write the whole class name. And why do we write the class name here when we don't do it here? The rule is if the class name is included in the association name. So in this case it's via order and that's also the name of the class, then we don't write anything. But in this case it's customer order and that's also the name of the class probably. But this one, rows, that's the name of the association end from customer order to something, but what is it? I need to remember. No, I don't have to remember because it says over here customer order row. Okay, fine. And then print jobs. So and of course when I click this it only takes the actual expression, so I can continue to work on it from there. So I think that's a great help to jog your memory, to navigate further in your model when you need to find stuff. So that's one little helper function that I think comes in handy, and there's another thing that I wanted to show that has come about. Maybe we can just let's see if what's the best example to do this. I think I'm gonna restart to get the default model again. Just to not mess things up. Okay. Something is slow. Very slow. So I'm gonna use the default model for this, and I think I have made some changes to the view model, just adding a few things in this widget here. There's a variable that is shown, and that will be important within the debugger, that where I'm going to show this stuff. Just going to switch off the Moncotype mode so that we get full functionality. I'm going to start it with XML and going into the debugger, and if I select some objects that I have in the debugger, I can take one of these, or even if I have the autoform open for it, I can grab the green dot and release that on result as root for view model UI, or result as view model tree. So let's see how that looks. We have shown this before. This is not the new thing, but still it's interesting that the root is now set to this object, and then I can choose between the view models available for that type. So I'm going to choose view one thing, and then I get the UI for that view model over here. And of course that's fully functional, so I can change and push this button to add things to the variable value over here. But one thing that was problematic was to switch between the functionality within the view model and the expressions available over here. We added a while back the clone view model variables, so you can just grab all the view models back to here. So let's see if I remove this and press clone. I get all the variables that are available in the view model defined, and also their values are set. So that value was the value that I wrote over here. But they are not, that's just a snapshot. So if I change it here, that won't help me over here. I need to clone them once more to get the value over here. Okay, so what if I want to be in expressions to assign something to this variable, like this. So now the variable has been updated to a new value, but how do I get that into the view model? So that was a bit of a problem. This is sort of a convoluted example, but once you're trying to debug something and see why stuff happens, you quite often want to influence the view model via some kind of script, and then you would want this value to be pushed back into here. So we added this button to actually take the values here to match for the matching variables that are available in here and write them back. So now you can clone them and write them back. So once you have cloned them, you can have stuff here and do whatever logic you need, and then write them back to the view model to help you to go further. And of course, this is the one showing the UI, but at times it's not interesting with the UI. You just need the view model tree to see the data and the functionality within. And then we have this view instead, the result as a root for a view model tree. And then I would take the green dot and drop that somewhere here, and take the same view model to get everything as just a expanded tree. And then you have the same thing over here, that you can clone these variables, and that variable doesn't have a value, so run it, and then you write back those, and you see that this new column is showing this new value over here. And also I guess the variable of the view model is shown as well over here. So
can you edit the OCL from here, or is that just to show it?
I think it's just to show it, so just copying it to the clipboard. But what we will add, and now it's a bit off in the display, but if I fold these it will be easier to see. The action buttons will be part of this tree as well. So this one had an action button over here, and they will show up in the tree. So in the end, when I press this button, and the action will be executed. So you can see that, and this is actually how a server-side view model in MDriven server works. That you get the tree data, and then the server pushes the buttons when it's about to execute. So that's quite good to be able to mimic that behavior in the debugger. So now that one has been updated, but this one has not, so I would have to clone it to get that value. And
then the same goes, this is the same also for APIs. So if you make it a REST API, you can use the same feature to simulate what's going on in your REST API.
Yes. So this works the same way. You would drag it over here and take the view that you want to act on, and get that as JSON data. And of course here you can change stuff straight up here, like the new column. Apply, and we haven't added the merge and the copy variables from here. I'm not sure if that's necessary. And if you want to see it as XML instead, that's equally doable, like that.
So what happens is in a REST, the REST API, it would basically run the view model and get into get. It just runs the view model and shows it. It doesn't write anything. But if you make a REST post thing, what would happen is that you read the view model from the back end, you write all the stuff into it, and then you post it. But it also runs the actions. So what you do is that you can like simulate changes that would come from the outside and see if is this an outside problem or an inside problem.
Yeah.
Because this Tyson workbench, you have the same, you can use these operators. So it's like a way to simulate when you use these EAL expressions on self-VM. Self-VM apply Tyson, for example.
Yeah. Good. And while we're here, I don't know if we have mentioned it or if it has gotten enough attention, but what's possible in this when we show the view like this is to check the hot reload of the view model, and what that does is if I can get them both on screen like this, this one will update continuously as I change stuff here. Very confusing. So that might be good if you're trying to get a feel for how it will end up. And what we haven't done, but what would be possible now as state of things are at this point, is to lift in a browser here instead and show the preview as HTML5 instead as VPF as we do now. I'm not sure that I think we can't make a hard switch. We need to be able to choose, but I think that could be a new thing to get a better feel for how it will look in runtime. Hi Johan, welcome.
Hi there, sorry to interrupt, but nice to see everyone.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much the stuff that I had, because we had this WinForms preview that's still there, but you can't move anything. But this is what the engine does for WinForms, and this is what it does for VPF with some styling on. And let's see, you're supposed to be able to change the styling, but I think we removed that because it was too complex. And then a third option would be to use the browser in the end. Let's see if that's the way to go. Pretty cool.
And the tricky thing with the browser, I guess, would here be that then should you also be able then to add styles? Probably. So should you then load components? Well, maybe. And so there's a lot of things, but maybe the round trip has to be all the way through to the server, but that's really tricky if the server is far away. So yeah, it's not obvious how to make that a representative rendering.
No, so and we need to mix in the well, in .NET 5 we can compile all the turnkey server, etc., and have a built-in web browser. So that's probably the way we will do it to get reuse of the drawing engine to get the UI up. But every time you move something, it's not a trivial round trip to recalculate what the UI should be and everything that comes with that. that's about that. Let's see.
Well, this early in today's talk. Any questions you would like to bring up that we should address? Questions to answer? Other things? Struggles?
Is everything working perfectly?
You have good lives, I can see that.
Yeah. So as Lars said, that the speed of the turnkey startup was improved quite a lot with the changes the recent days. So I think I need to download a new one because this is from
And I don't think you'll see it with a model that is small. It
no,
has to be a big model with a lot of stuff in it, both model-wise and additional resources and components. And I guess if you run this locally, you don't have a slow old machine running this like Microsoft does for their web apps.
Well, exactly. So Azure is quite cumbersome to work with. Sometimes it behaves a bit different. It reacts differently. And of course, that if the round trip is, or if the startup is faster, it will be faster when this prototype reacts to changes in the model. When the model file change. So if I can have this one on screen at the same time and move things around over here, resaving, this one reloads. So that's another way to get a feel for how it will look in runtime. Let's see. But if we were able to move this part into here and put boxes around these to change these around, it might be cool. So that's about it. From also, everyone should consider switching to Visual Studio 2022 if you haven't done so. Plan that in. Shouldn't be too hard a switch. So we get that out of our hair. 2017. We will probably drop support for that soon because we will only maintain support for 2. Let's see if I can show another thing, and that we showed on the MDriven Summit. That was what we did. I've started work with using Blazor components. So I'm just gonna start a different project here.
Is it Derek or Brian? Are any of you using Turnkey yet?
I'm not using it yet. I intend to start to get to use it probably this summer on some of my apps for the first time. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, but I haven't actually used it yet.
I haven't used it.
Sorry.
This is Brian. I haven't used it.
Yeah.
I do all my development in Visual Studio.
Well, I mean, it's not required, but we put a lot of anything that is web-based. I would say it's so much easier to use it. We were talking about what to talk about today, and one of the things is maybe we could show more about how you put only the code needed, but still code in Turnkey with this that we call code dress. You dress up your dynamic part with code because I don't think we all want to be able to Google and look at Stack Overflow and grab some code and put it in. And we have a lot of legacy stuff maybe, but still don't want to put all the effort into making a web UI because there's no way around it that making a web client is a nightmare. And of course that's what Blazor is about, not to have to do. But for the foreseeable future, I think we still need to at least be able to do it. So that would be one thing to show maybe if you have an interest in looking at that part of it, for example. How do you inject stuff into? We have, for example, this project where we are showing 3D models, which is injecting components into the UI. We showed also at the summit, we showed Alexandra and Dennis talked about some of how do you make it look cool, because most people say, it doesn't look cool, and it's not cool to look at your boring UI, but it's also that it's not that far from it actually usually, because you have a few UIs that you want to make cool. Otherwise it's mostly about just choosing the colors and those things for your UI. But then, for example, this project that I've been working on now to optimize, they had this search thing that they wanted, and it took 3-4 seconds to open the page, which was completely unacceptable apparently, and it took almost a second to get your search result, which was also completely unacceptable. We all know that 1 second is way too long, so it had to go down. So I got it down now to like 0.2, 0.3 seconds for search and update, and I would say you can't even tell that it's searching anymore. But I mean, it's like we're one person project, but you still compare everything straight to Google. It's like, why isn't it as fast as Google? Yeah, they have
I think the first versions of Google were slow as well. So first you need to solve the problem, and then you need to make it fast. So
that's basically what we have done here. We have the business case, and now I've shaved off each 1/10 of a second on different parts. Don't prefetch from the database, search faster do some of the indexing, and preload it in memory. And there are ways. I mean, a web server, if you create a global variable, a list that holds something, you can share that among sessions actually with ease. And so with just a little bit of locking in between threads, you can create a faster backend, because it might, you might get this feeling that like, but there's so much going on in this streaming of attributes and stuff that it can't be fast. But that's actually not true. It can be really fast. We have no problems to deliver a search result with a couple of hundred of rows within like 50 milliseconds and load it onto the screen. And that is fast enough for a lot of things. So it comes down to polishing away those things that halts the process, the flow, you could say, of the whole thing. So we can run examples of that when you have maybe tried it a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do we do these things?
Well, that's hit the nail on the head, I think, with respect to the performance aspect that's prevented, well, not prevented, but has held me back really from experimenting too much with that. It's just that with the, my perception, be it false or true, has been that, in my own environment, everything is going to be fast, and if it's not fast, then it's my problem, and there's no ambiguity as to whether it's my problem or internet connection problem or something like that. So, but having said that, I know that things have been improving generally. I was, like I say, I'm kind of on the cusp of starting to at least experiment and try and prove to myself exactly what is a realistic expectation from a turnkey type of service.
Mm.
So, yeah. So it's good news. It's good news to hear that, what you're saying.
It's almost never, as long as your code is running and there's not a far, if you don't have to go far to get the data, that's mostly the problem. The
network is the latency in the network is always an issue, of course.
So, but we try it. I've tested these things also on slow. You can simulate in Chrome, slow down the network speed and see how it works. As long as you at least have a fast 3G connection, it's usually not it will be a bit sluggish, but it's okay in almost all scenarios.
Mm.
So client is actually not, it's quite lightweight. If you look at a modern newspaper, online, if you can load CNN or whatever, you can load anything from us or from Turnkey, because that's like a ton of advertisement and things. So if you look at the total page load time, it's amazing that they can load that many megabytes of advertisement onto your computer that fast.
And that the user still stays at the page there. Yeah. So when it comes to the Blazor thing, it's currently it's not done, but here we can see that we have made use of an external Blazor component library called MatBlazor that's open source, and there's just a small glue to make that available to all the view models within the Turnkey application currently. And this, if you add data, you can see that it's data bound as should be, and of course someone has spent a lot of nights and free time on doing this stuff for us, open source. Thank you. And it's great to be able to pull that in to make use of that. So this datetime picker is better than the one that's in Google by default, because here you can choose time and things like that separately, and switch years differently, and jump between months, and lots of small things like that. But the major thing that stands out when you check the HTML within this page is that there's basically nothing here. It's just the CSS stuff that explains where stuff should be in a CSS grid on the page, and also what controls to use. So this is the magic of Blazor, to sort of do all the work on the server side and just send down the HTML and keep the logic on the server. So let's see how that evolves. I think it's a good approach, but of course here we will suffer from if we want to do logic, like if I move the mouse over these things and it should happen unique stuff, and you put that logic on the server, then all the mouse moves would need to be sent back to the server to be processed, and then it will be sluggish pretty fast. So it's not good for everything, but it's good for a lot of things. And that's the problematic stuff with the web from the get-go, that it's not necessarily that you can do have the same strategy for all the things you're going to do. You need to switch and adapt depending on what kind of problem you have. I don't know, Lars, if we should show what we did, where we are at this. Oops, probably not.
You go to number 2 instead.
So Han, which Blazor library did you say you're using?
For Blazor, we tried the Math Blazor. So let's.
Math, M-A-P,
Yeah,
or?
no, M-A-T.
M-A-T, Math Blazor. Okay, thanks.
So they have quite a big collection of stuff that.
So can you just explain for a second, how did you come to the decision to use this one? Did you research other ones, or?
No, I didn't research much at all. My point was that we should be able to use anyone, and you as a developer using Turnkey should be able to just pick a library off the net and do some minor adaptation code to get that to work within Turnkey like this. You're gonna fill in a component factory, filling up a specific interface where you say what your component names are and what implementation they are. And once you have that implementation, you need to sort of be able to bind the data to the
Okay.
to the markup. So in this case, we bind it to customer, and then we pour in the data that way.
So Blazor is basic. I mean, you had the classic web page. You downloaded the HTML code and you showed that, and then came all these JavaScript frameworks that more or less, makes it a partially fatty client, right? And then Blazor server rendered is basically back to the terminal again. It's saying, hey, let's render it all on the server, and then we have a small JavaScript engine in the browser that creates a terminal like it was in the 1970s. But instead of streaming characters, that was the only thing you could stream over back then. We stream over the HTML changes and apply them on the fly to the user interface. So it turns the client into a super thin thing again, with both benefits and drawbacks, of course. And our JavaScript Angular JS client is somewhere in between where we have, like, we render all the data and we render the template server side, but we join them with data bind in the current HTML5 client with data binds client side. But here in Blazor, the data binding is server side instead. So there are so many different takes on how to get a UI to the user. I still think that the current client we have is actually a very good balance between needing a server to talk to quite regularly, but not all the time. Like Hans said, when you move the mouse, you can do animations and stuff more easily client side. But the main thing from security standpoint with the current setup, and of course with this Blazor, is you don't expose any data that you don't want to expose, because there's no way for the client to talk or see anything that isn't view model defined. So there's zero risk of it leaking something unintended. And that is also so nice when you are in the model, you can right click on any attribute and you can see in which view models that is shown. And you can say, we know for sure that it's only these view models that expose that data, which is a very nice thing if you're selling anything to a company that has worries, which they should have in today's world when you publish stuff on the internet. So that is a very nice thing. But this will, my basic point, I guess, is that this will never end. This, flow, or should it be more like a terminal? Should it be more processed on the client? Should it be a hybrid? We just try to bring the whole model and view model thing and for 95% of your UI, and then you tweak the last 5% that can't be standard.
Yeah, and that's the important thing, that you're able to tweak the 5%, so that you're not stuck like the old strategies where someone made a product that would solve all your needs except 5%, and then it doesn't really fly.
So this component, MatBlazer, yes, as you said, anything should be able to put into it. But again, we want, I guess, a bit of warning towards getting these super bloated components. Says, yeah, it can do everything. It can sort and it can do this and search, blah, 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 blah. It can do all these things. Yeah, but that also means that you need to put all that data onto the client, which takes both bandwidth and time and client resources and stuff. So it's not a golden hammer to just put more and more stuff onto your web browser.
No. So this is a turnkey site that we're currently working on to produce. Let's see if I find any data to pull in here. And of course this upload component is not standard, but and what should happen now was to, yeah, this is new. Okay, let's see.
Is the 3D renderer running?
Let's see, it should be popping up within a second if it is.
Should I connect to the...
I can check it. See if...
You're doing that? Okay.
While you're working on that, Hans, could I ask a question?
Yeah.
It's kind of different from what you're working on, but I was just researching something to be able to maybe run an app on a phone and use a database and using SQLite. And I'm wondering if you have any experience, or anyone has any experience working like on Android or Apple using SQLite with MDriven.
Yeah, so not in production setting, but I've done quite a few experiments with
Okay. So it's doable, I guess is kind of the... And the SQLite MDriven driver is fully functional? There's not any issues there that I should run into?
No, not. Of course, SQLite is a really simple database engine, and there's limitations on what it will allow you to do. So you will get surprised a bit on the if you're used to SQL in SQL Server, you can't. The parser, this SQL parser is really simple. So if you sort of put a plus between two strings, it won't understand what you mean and things like that. So, but what you can do is run it straight from the designer. I guess I'll shut that down. In the prototype play, there's a SQL link option that you can evolved SQL link database, SQLite database, etc.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So I uploaded this 3D model, and of course this is rendered client side on 3GS, which is an open source library for 3D models. And now you can just add more files and drag in more, and this is heavily redesigned from what we have had in the view model, but it's still pulling all the data from the view model, and we're using tag expander to get all these things in place. So there's I think this is a good example to show that it doesn't have to look stale or obvious or just like everything else just because you're using a product in the back end. And you're free to do anything that gets the job done, so to speak. Good.
If we're kind of out of time, but you can just click on that link, Hans.
Yeah.
Should load the other search thing. We can show that more if you want to. So this was the load time here. Still, it's not super fast, but it's not that slow. And then now if you search for, I don't know, space.
Space.
Press,
Oh,
yeah.
That's quick. Now it's a lot quicker than it was, right?
Oh, and if you take something big like this, yeah.
It's super fast.
And even if you type Sage there, for example, I think there are more there, or
What? Sage?
something. Yeah. So yeah, that's another way to present things, right?
Cool. Yeah. So we're out of time. Thank you very much for showing up tonight, and hope to see you in 2 weeks. And don't be afraid to give us some ideas of what you need, stuff. See you.
Yeah, and Brian.
Thank you.
Brian, I just want to say, so if you have these ideas, lingering about, you can always send an email to ask, it's like, what do you think about this?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's more a picture type idea I have, but thanks for the info.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Interesting. Thanks for the invite, Hans.
Yeah. So we have these kind of meetings